Here's Prescott. Just throws it deep as far as his arm can take him. He caught it! Micah Parsons on the move. Micah Parsons is in! Welcome to the big show, Tony Pollard. Oh, going deep. It is intercepted.
But I'm not going to say a word, but I will say one thing right now.
Prescott, touchdown. Good protection, and the pass wide open. Touchdown, Lamb.
Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. It's Space Cowboy here with another video for you guys here today as we move over to the defensive side of the ball in our position evaluation series for the 2023 Dallas Cowboys. Yes, we're finally on to that group, and if you have not seen the other episodes where we talked about the offense, don't worry. At the very end of this video, there's a title card which will direct you to the previous videos that have come out so you can get caught up with the series or any news that's been talked about there. Also, if you haven't done so already, please make sure to hit the like button to show your support for this channel and fight against the YouTube algorithm. On top of all of that, subscribe if you're new and hit that notification bell as well. Thank you guys so much for 12,000 subscribers. It's been one hell of a journey. I'm excited to continue this momentum as we talk about this team. And let's go ahead and dive straight into this defensive line, right? You know, we look at how the Cowboys made moves throughout Mike McCarthy's tenure, adding Dan Quinn, you know, redoing this whole roster on the defensive side of the ball. And really the last spot that needed some fixing up was the interior of the defensive line and some dedication there. And historically speaking, if we're talking about Dan Quinn, he's always had that big dude in the middle of the defense, and you kind of look at his, you know, track record. That's really what was the last component here, and they got that in Mazi Smith, but we'll talk about him in just a moment. I wanted to focus on the defensive ends of this defensive line room. As we know, DeMarcus Lawrence right now is still the dude at that position. And across from him, you have Dorrance Armstrong. That's kind of what the Cowboys have been leaning on. But we know with Tank, there's been the injuries. But when he's healthy, one of the best run defenders in the league. On the opposite side, Dorrance Armstrong has been dependable. He's given us solid production for the price point we're paying him. But with his contract expiring after this year, the Cowboys have to make a decision. Do we re-sign him? Or do you give the keys to Sam Williams? Because Sam Williams has improved very dramatically throughout the 2022 season. And I'm curious to see where he's going to stand after this go-around. Because if Sam Williams starts to show glimpses of production similar or better than Dorrance Armstrong, then we don't need to have the conversation of, hey, we need to pay Dorrance, you know, we could just move on. Also, you know, looking at the list here of the guys that are in the room outside of those three that we just mentioned, Dante Fowler's back as a depth piece for another year. You also talk about a guy in Chauncey Goldstein who was added into this room as depth, and we kind of hope that maybe he could be something, but so far hasn't had that opportunity, but has that flex to play the interior too. Now you have a guy in Viliami Fehoko. You know, he's got the same type of flexibility as a Chauncey Goldstein. You know, and we'll see how things are going there. But you're kind of starting to see the Cowboys add more depth and pieces to the back end of this defensive line, because that's kind of what you need to start doing. And here's why. As I mentioned, Dorrance Armstrong's contract expires, but also now we're kind of moving into the interior now. Neville Gallimore and Osa Odigizua, guys that are having their contracts come up relatively quickly, and also not to mention Jonathan Hankins, his contract expires as well after this year. You're going to have a lot of these dudes start to walk out the door. I mean, you let Carlos Watkins go, which is fine and all, as long as you are supplementing that with other talent. And then you add Mazi Smith into the mix, so you're at least having him for 5 years, which is great. But from what we're hearing, the minicamp notes and information state that Mazi Smith and Jonathan Hankins has been a part of several packages, especially on the goal line, which is interesting to say the least. It really comes down to, okay, so what happens with Osa? What happens with Neville Gallimore? What happens to everybody behind that? So when you look at the room there, aside from Mazi Smith, you have guys like Jonathan Hankins, Neville Gallimore, Quinton Bohanna, and then, you know, Osa, as we mentioned. And that's pretty much it. And what's scary, and also Isaac Alacorn, the guy that was playing tackle, then guard, and now they move him over here. The reason why this is super important is because a lot of these dudes on the bottom end of things, like Isaac could be on the chopping block. I think he is. I think that you look at a guy like Quentin Bohanna, he could be on the chopping block. Neville Gallimore definitely is, because as we saw from last year, he was a healthy scratch from the team as we moved further and further through the season, even with Jonathan Hankins being hurt. So what worries me is if those guys, like for example, Neville Gallimore, aren't getting playing time, it's like, okay, so why aren't you trying to trade him? But the Cowboys say, oh, we need him because he's an up-and-coming player, but he's got one more year on his deal. And so the way I look at it, guys, is that I think they said that for insurance purposes and also to kind of build a trade, value, but I don't think they're going to trade him. So the question now becomes, okay, so how are things going to pan out here, and then what would I grade it? I think right now, you have, of course, DeMarcus Lawrence as the certified starter. I think that Dorrance is still the starter at that end, but it's more so rotation over there, mixed in Sam Williams and company. In the interior, Mazi Smith most likely will start, and depending on how you're going to deploy this defense, it could be that you play Mazi, and Jonathan Hankins. Maybe I could see Mazi and Osa, but again, it really comes down to how they want to utilize the 3 techs and the 1 techs, because, Mazi has flexibility there. It's just when you're starting to kind of piece together the puzzle here, there's so many combinations, and I think that what also is worrisome is that Mazi has to pan out. I think he's got a great work ethic, and we're kind of seeing what this dude can bring to the table, which is something that is important, because you kind of get that, vibe that, hey, like, this dude's going to be something. And again, we don't need him to put up gaudy stats. We just need him to do his job. And he's not going to get a whole lot of, stats that are going to pop off the stat sheet. There are people like giving him a taco comparison, which they're 2 different players, play 2 different positions, built 2 different ways. Like, that was ridiculous during the draft talk and all that other stuff. But again, when you look at this defensive line, though, it's really predicated on Mazi Smith really showing up and showing out. Because if Mazi doesn't pan out, this room very much so looks similar to last year, but then again, we didn't really need to do a whole lot to add to this group. We just needed to add a solid, consistent player in the defensive tackle room that can be the dude to help Micah Parsons and the rest of the pass rushers to get home, because that was a huge thing. We talk about the run defense. I know the edges were really an issue when we added Jonathan Hankins here, but if I'm being truthful with you guys, the addition to Mazi Smith is going to help tremendously with creating more turnovers, with creating more sacks and pressures. That's what we need Mazi to do. I don't need Mazi to get a whole lot of sacks. While that is welcomed, I don't need that. I just need him to keep Micah Parsons fresh and not have him have a burnout towards the tail end and have him be more effective. As long as that happens, I think this defense is going to be top 3, and that's really what you need, especially when you're trying to go far into the postseason. You need your defense to step up, and that's where it's like we need to create a situation where this defense is really the focal point, and the offense doesn't need to put up the gaudy stats to get the job done. It's welcomed. Again, I'm just trying to make it clear that, like, if we're trying to fully build this defense, that's where we stand. So if I had to put a grade on this entire defensive line, I mean, all things considered with the production, I think that the starters make it a B+, but the guys behind them, it's really like mid-level production, just calling a spade a spade. I think that it's a B group. If Mazi pans out, B+, A-, but I think, again, like, the rotation outside of the guys like Sam Williams, again, I'm not talking about the starters like I mentioned. Sam Williams, Osa, maybe Fowler, maybe. But outside of those dudes, it's just a bunch of other guys that are just there. And we're just hoping we could see more. Again, I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong when I say that. So right now I'm going to give it a solid B. Maybe I'm being too harsh. You guys can disagree with me. But put that down in the comment section below. Do you think that I'm being a bit too pessimistic on this defensive line? Do you think I'm right? Just put all your thoughts and opinions down there. And with that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next video. You guys have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.